in the opulent yet suffocating gilded cage of Versailles, where the very air was thick with the scent of jasmine, powdered wigs, and the unspoken anxieties of a dying era, a dangerous game was perpetually afoot. This was not merely a palace, it was a crucible, a political pressure cooker where personal lives were public currency, and reputation, a weapon sharper than any blade. Here, beneath the dazzling chandeliers and amidst the rustle of silk, the whispers of intrigue could dismantle a dynasty, and the most intimate details of one's existence became fodder for a relentless, often brutal, public spectacle. At the heart of this glittering, treacherous labyrinth stood Marie Antoinette, a figure perpetually misunderstood, relentlessly maligned, and ultimately tragically consumed by the very forces she was meant to embody. She was not merely a queen, a distant, regal figure on a throne. She was a foreign body in a hostile system, an Austrian archduchess thrust into the rigid, unforgiving world of the French court. From the moment she crossed the border, shedding her Habsburg identity for a Bourbon crown, she was inherently vulnerable to attack, a convenient scapegoat for the deep-seated resentments and anxieties that simmered beneath the surface of French society. Her very presence, her foreignness, her youth, and her initial struggles to conform to the labyrinthine etiquette of Versailles made her an easy target for those who sought to undermine the monarchy, or simply to advance their own precarious positions within the court. This narrative is not a romanticized tale of illicit passion, nor is it a simple recounting of historical events. Instead, it is a profound exploration of how the so-called affairs of Marie Antoinette were less about genuine romantic entanglements, and more about a deliberate, insidious campaign of character assassination. These were not merely whispers born of idle gossip. They were meticulously crafted narratives, designed to destroy a queen, driven by cynical political agendas, fueled by societal anxieties, and amplified by a burgeoning venomous underground press. Her alleged indiscretions, whether real or imagined, became the perfect ammunition for a revolution brewing in the shadows, a powerful tool to discredit the monarchy and justify its eventual overthrow. We will embark on a journey into the dark heart of this historical conspiracy, dissecting the mechanisms of rumour, identifying the architects of lies, and exposing the devastating impact they had on a queen, a family, and ultimately the fate of an entire nation. We will peel back the layers of propaganda and prejudice to reveal how Marie Antoinette's image was systematically distorted, her private life weaponized, and her very humanity stripped away. Prepare to confront the uncomfortable truth that the most enduring scandals are often the most meticulously manufactured, and that in the crucible of public opinion, perception can be a more potent and destructive force than any historical fact. This is the story of Marie Antoinette, not as a victim of her own desires, but as a casualty of lust, lies, and the relentless pursuit of royal shame. A narrative that continues to echo through the corridors of history, a chilling testament to the power of a narrative controlled by those who seek to destroy. To truly comprehend the relentless assault on Marie Antoinette's character, one must first understand the treacherous political landscape into which she was thrust. Her marriage to the Dauphin, the future Louis XVI, in 1770, was not a love match, but a strategic alliance, a diplomatic manoeuvre designed to solidify the fragile peace between two ancient rivals, the Bourbon dynasty of France and the Habsburg Empire of Austria. For centuries, these two great powers had been locked in a bitter struggle for European hegemony, their conflicts often spilling onto battlefields across the continent. The marriage was intended to usher in an era of unprecedented cooperation, a grand diplomatic revolution that would reshape the balance of power in Europe. But beneath the veneer of celebration and diplomatic goodwill, deep-seated resentments and suspicions lingered, particularly within the French court and among the populace. Marie Antoinette, as an Austrian archduchess, was immediately viewed with suspicion by powerful factions within France. The anti-Austrian party, a vocal and influential group, saw her as a symbol of foreign influence, a potential conduit for Austrian interests that could undermine French sovereignty. This faction, composed of disgruntled courtiers, ambitious ministers, and even members of the royal family, wasted no time in exploiting her foreignness, painting her as an outsider, an interloper who could never truly understand or embrace French traditions. Her initial struggles with the labyrinthine etiquette of the French court, her perceived extravagance, and the agonizingly long unconsummated marriage to Louis XVI all became convenient points of attack, providing ample ammunition for those who sought to discredit her. From the moment she arrived, Marie Antoinette found herself under intense scrutiny. Every action, every word, every choice of attire was dissected and judged. The French court, far from being a unified entity, was a viper's nest of competing interests, rivalries, and petty jealousies. Courtiers, with little else to occupy their time beyond social manoeuvring, became expert observers and disseminators of whispers, their reputations often hinging on their proximity to power and their ability to influence opinion. In this rarefied atmosphere, where appearances were everything and sincerity was often a liability, Marie Antoinette's genuine attempts to assert her individuality, or to find solace in private amusements, were often misinterpreted as arrogance, frivolity, or a blatant disregard for French customs. These perceived transgressions, whether real or imagined, were eagerly seized upon by her detractors and amplified, further solidifying her image as an unsuitable queen. The unconsummated marriage, in particular, became a source of immense public anxiety and whispered speculation. For 7 agonizing years, the royal couple failed to produce an heir, a fact that became a national crisis in a monarchy where succession was paramount. The public, ever eager for gossip and scandal, attributed the delay to various causes, from Louis XVI's alleged physical infirmity to Marie Antoinette's supposed frigidity or even her alleged promiscuity. This period of barrenness fueled the nascent rumours about her character, painting her as an unsuitable queen, more interested in frivolous pursuits than in her dynastic duties. The pressure on the young couple was immense, and their inability to fulfil their primary royal duty provided fertile ground for the seeds of scandal to take root, long before any genuine accusations of infidelity emerged. Versailles, therefore, was not just a palace, it was a battleground, a microcosm of the larger political struggles unfolding within France. Here, political battles were often fought not with armies, but through social means, through the manipulation of public opinion, and through the systematic destruction of a rival's reputation. Marie Antoinette, as the most visible and often most reviled figure of the court, became an irresistible target. Her personal life, her perceived failings, and her very identity as a foreign queen were all exploited for strategic advantage by those who sought to undermine her influence and discredit her. This relentless campaign, driven by political agendas and fueled by deep-seated prejudices, laid the groundwork for the more insidious and widespread slander that would eventually consume her, transforming her from a queen into a pariah and setting the stage for the tragic downfall of the French monarchy. If Versailles was the hothouse where rumours germinated, then the burgeoning underground press was the fertile soil that allowed them to flourish, spreading their toxic tendrils throughout French society. The phenomenon of the libelle, a clandestine, often anonymously published pamphlet, was a powerful and insidious force in 18th century France. These were not mere gossip sheets. They were sophisticated instruments of propaganda designed to inflame public opinion, undermine authority, and ultimately to dismantle the very foundations of the Ancien Regime. Unchecked by truth or journalistic ethics, these libelles became the primary vehicle for the systematic character assassination of Marie Antoinette, transforming her from a queen into a monstrous caricature in the public imagination. The origins of the libelle can be traced to a long tradition of political satire and dissent, but in the decades leading up to the Revolution, they evolved into a potent weapon of mass defamation, Printed secretly, often abroad and smuggled into France, these pamphlets circulated widely among all strata of society, from the salons of the aristocracy to the bustling cafes of Paris. Their reach was immense, their impact profound. They tapped into a growing public hunger for news, scandal, and criticism of the monarchy, particularly as economic hardship and political discontent mounted. The anonymity of their authors allowed for unprecedented levels of vitriol and fabrication, creating a parallel reality where rumour became fact and insinuation undeniable truth. The accusations levelled against Marie Antoinette in these libelles were meticulously crafted to resonate with popular grievances and prejudices. They fell broadly into three interconnected categories: financial profligacy, political interference, and most damagingly, sexual depravity. She was branded Madame Deficit. Her extravagant spending on fashion, jewels, and the upkeep of the Petit Trianon presented as a direct cause of France's crippling national debt. Every new gown, every diamond, every theatrical performance at her private retreat was exaggerated into an act of wanton waste, a stark contrast to the growing poverty and hunger of the common people. This narrative of financial irresponsibility was particularly potent, tapping into a deep well of resentment against the perceived excesses of the aristocracy. Beyond financial ruin, the libelles accused her of blatant political interference, portraying her as a manipulative foreign agent who wielded undue influence over her indecisive husband, Louis XVI. She was depicted as the Austrian woman, pulling the strings of the French government, betraying French interests in favour of her Habsburg homeland. This played directly into the existing anti-Austrian sentiment and fuelled fears of a foreign conspiracy at the heart of the French court. Her attempts to advise the king, often born of a genuine desire to strengthen the monarchy, were twisted into sinister plots, further eroding public trust in the crown and its foreign-born queen. But it was the sexualization of power, the relentless focus on her alleged promiscuity, that truly distinguished the slander campaign against Marie Antoinette and inflicted the most lasting damage. The libelle depicted her as a nymphomaniac, engaging in a dizzying array of illicit affairs with both men and women, and even, most horrifyingly, with her own children. These were not mere whispers. They were graphic, often pornographic narratives, designed to dehumanize her, strip her of moral authority, and make her an easier target for revolutionary fervour. The accusations of heterosexual affairs, particularly with figures like the Duc de Lauzun or the Comte d'Artois, were meant to portray her as unfaithful to her husband and her royal duties. The allegations of lesbianism, particularly with her close female friends like the Princesse de Lamballe or the Duchesse de Polignac, tapped into societal anxieties about female power and independence, portraying her as unnatural and perverse. And the ultimate taboo, the accusation of incest with her son, the young Dauphin, was a deliberate and cynical tactic to utterly destroy her maternal dignity and portray her as a monster, unfit to be a queen, a mother, or even a human being. These sexual accusations served a dual purpose. Firstly, they aimed to discredit her personally, to present her as morally corrupt and therefore unfit to rule. In a society that valued female virtue, particularly in its queens, such allegations were devastating. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, they served a political function. By portraying the queen as sexually depraved, the libelles implicitly suggested that the entire monarchy was rotten to the core, that its moral decay was a reflection of its political illegitimacy. The private vices of the queen were presented as a metaphor for the public corruption of the state, making the idea of revolution not just desirable, but morally imperative. Specific examples of these libelles abound, each more outrageous than the last. The royal orgy, l'orgie royale, depicted her engaging in scandalous revelries at the Petit Trianon. The Austrian tigresse, la tigresse autrichienne, portrayed her as a bloodthirsty tyrant. The royal family in the menagerie, la famille royale dans la ménagerie, depicted her and her family as animals, engaging in grotesque acts. These were not subtle critiques. They were blunt, visceral attacks designed to shock, outrage, and incite. The language was crude, the imagery explicit, and the message clear. The Queen was a depraved monster, and the monarchy a cesspool of vice. Why did these rumours find such fertile ground among the populace? The answer lies in a complex interplay of factors. Decades of economic hardship, exacerbated by costly wars and an inefficient tax system, had created widespread discontent. The perceived extravagance of the court, particularly that of the Queen, became a convenient scapegoat for the suffering of the common people. Furthermore, the Enlightenment had fostered a spirit of critical inquiry and a growing distrust of absolute monarchy. The libelles, though often fabricated, tapped into these existing anxieties and provided a tangible human face to the abstract concept of royal corruption. The public, hungry for explanations for their plight, found them in the lurid tales of the Queen's alleged affairs and excesses. The constant repetition of these narratives, amplified by word of mouth and the sheer volume of printed material, gradually transformed them into accepted truths, regardless of their factual basis. These seeds of revolution were sown not just in economic hardship and political oppression, but in the fertile ground of public perception, meticulously tilled by the relentless spread of rumours and lies, turning a queen into a pariah and setting the stage for her tragic downfall. The anatomy of this slander campaign reveals a chilling precision, a deliberate and effective strategy to dismantle a queen's reputation, paving the way for the ultimate collapse of a monarchy built on the fragile foundations of public trust and perceived legitimacy. If the libelles were the poisoned arrows, then the affair of the diamond necklace was the siege engine that finally breached the walls of public trust surrounding Marie Antoinette. This convoluted and sensational scandal, unfolding between 1784 and 1785, was not merely another unfortunate incident. It was a meticulously orchestrated con, a masterclass in manipulation that perfectly exploited the existing prejudices against the Queen and irrevocably cemented her image as a frivolous, extravagant and deceitful monarch in the public imagination. It was a dress rehearsal for the revolutionary tribunals, a public trial where the Queen's reputation, rather than her legal culpability, was the true defendant. To understand the profound impact of this affair, one must first grasp its central object, an astonishingly opulent diamond necklace. Commissioned by King Louis XV for his mistress, Madame du Barry, it was a masterpiece of 647 flawless diamonds, weighing an astounding 2,800 carats, with an estimated value of 1.6 million livres, a sum so astronomical it could have funded a significant portion of the French navy. However, Louis XV died before the necklace was completed, leaving the jewellers, Baumer and Bassange, with an unsellable treasure. They desperately tried to offload it, first to Louis XVI, who, with rare fiscal prudence, refused, and then repeatedly to Marie Antoinette. The Queen, despite her well-known love for jewels, had consistently rejected the purchase, citing its exorbitant cost and the precarious financial state of the kingdom. Her famous, though perhaps apocryphal retort, "We have more need of frigates than of necklaces," reflected a moment of unexpected wisdom that would be tragically overshadowed by the ensuing scandal. Enter the con artists, a trio of desperate and ambitious individuals whose actions would ignite a powder keg of public outrage. At the centre was Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Remy, a woman of dubious lineage who falsely claimed descent from the Valois royal house and styled herself as the Comtesse de la Motte. She was a cunning, audacious, and utterly immoral manipulator, driven by a desperate desire for wealth and social standing. Her primary target was Cardinal Louis de Rohan, a powerful but deeply ambitious and somewhat naive nobleman. Rohan, a former ambassador to Vienna, had fallen out of favour with Marie Antoinette due to his indiscreet remarks about her mother, Empress Maria Theresa. He was desperate to regain the Queen's good graces, believing that her favour was essential for his political advancement, perhaps even to become Prime Minister. The third key player was an impostor, Nicole d'Oliva, a Parisian prostitute hired by Lamotte to impersonate the Queen. Lamotte, recognising Rohan's desperate ambition and his fervent desire to reconcile with the Queen, began to weave an elaborate web of lies. She convinced Rohan that she was a confidant of Marie Antoinette, acting as a secret intermediary between the Cardinal and the Queen. Through a series of forged letters, ostensibly from the Queen, Lamotte led Rohan to believe that Marie Antoinette secretly desired the diamond necklace, but could not openly purchase it due to public opinion and the King's disapproval. The letter suggested that the Queen wished Rohan to acquire the necklace on her behalf, promising to repay him in instalments and to restore him to her favour. Rohan, blinded by ambition and a desperate longing for royal approval, fell completely for the elaborate charade, his vanity overriding any shred of common sense. The deception reached its climax in a series of clandestine meetings, orchestrated by Lamotte in the gardens of Versailles. In one particularly audacious act, Lamotte arranged a nocturnal rendezvous between Rohan and Nicole d'Oliva, the impostor. Dressed in a white muslin dress similar to those favoured by the Queen, and with her face obscured by shadow, d'Oliva briefly appeared before Rohan, accepting a rose and whispering words of forgiveness, thereby solidifying Rohan's belief that he was indeed dealing directly with the Queen. This brief theatrical encounter, lasting mere minutes, was enough to convince the Cardinal that he had finally won the Queen's trust and affection, and that his path back to royal favour was assured. Convinced that he was acting on the Queen's secret instructions, Rohan signed a promissory note for the necklace, believing that Marie Antoinette would honour the payments. The jewellers, Baume and Bassange, released the necklace to Rohan, who in turn handed it over to Lamotte, believing she would deliver it to the Queen. Lamotte, however, immediately dismantled the necklace, selling the individual diamonds on the black markets of Paris and London, using the proceeds to fund her lavish lifestyle and climb the social ladder. For a time, her deception went undetected as she continued to send Rohan forged letters, assuring him of the Queen's gratitude and promising forthcoming payments, all while the jewellers grew increasingly anxious. The unravelling of the fraud was as dramatic as its execution. When the jewellers, having received no payments, directly approached Marie Antoinette for payment, the Queen, utterly bewildered, denied any knowledge of the transaction. The truth, slowly and painfully, began to emerge. Louis XVI, furious at the deception and the public embarrassment it caused, ordered the arrest of Cardinal de Rohan in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, a shocking public humiliation for a prince of the Church. Lamotte and her accomplices were also apprehended, and a sensational public trial ensued. This was not merely a legal proceeding, it was a political theatre, a proxy battle for the soul of the monarchy. The public, already predisposed to believe the worst about their Queen, followed every twist and turn with avid interest. The trial became a platform for the airing of grievances against the monarchy, and Marie Antoinette, though not formally on trial, was the true defendant in the court of public opinion. Despite overwhelming evidence of Lamotte's guilt and Rohan's astonishing naivety, the Parlement of Paris, swayed by public sentiment and a deep-seated animosity towards the Queen, acquitted Rohan. Lamotte was condemned to be whipped, branded, and imprisoned. But her public defiance and her continued insistence on the Queen's complicity only served to further damage Marie Antoinette's already fragile reputation. The verdict, seen by many as a condemnation of the Queen, sent shockwaves across France and Europe. It was a devastating blow to the prestige and moral authority of the French crown. The long-term consequences of the affair of the diamond necklace were catastrophic. Despite her complete innocence in the affair, the public, already primed by years of libels and rumours, saw her as the true culprit. The acquittal of Rohan, a man who had clearly been duped, was interpreted as a deliberate cover-up, a sign of the Queen's manipulative nature and her ability to escape justice. The scandal confirmed every negative stereotype that had been circulating about her: her extravagance, her deceitfulness, her moral corruption. It solidified her image as Madame Deficit and a promiscuous schemer, further eroding public trust in the monarchy. The affair became a powerful symbol of the perceived decadence and corruption of the court, a stark contrast to the growing poverty and discontent of the French people. It was a public relations disaster of epic proportions, a wound from which the monarchy would never fully recover, and a significant catalyst that propelled France closer to the brink of revolution. The diamonds, once a symbol of royal splendour, became a symbol of royal shame, forever tarnishing the image of a queen who, in this instance, was truly a victim of lust, lies, and the relentless pursuit of royal shame. In the swirling vortex of scandal and public condemnation that engulfed Marie Antoinette, a figure emerged whose unwavering loyalty and profound affection offered a rare, if ultimately tragic, beacon of solace: Count Hans Axel von Fersen. Their relationship, shrouded in mystery and debated by historians for centuries, stands as one of the most compelling and poignant narratives of the late 18th century. However, to truly understand this bond, we must move beyond the simplistic binary of lover or friend and explore it as a complex tapestry woven from shared intellect, deep emotional intimacy, and an unshakable devotion that defied the rigid conventions of their time. Axel von Fersen first encountered Marie Antoinette at a masquerade ball in Paris in 1770, when she was still the Dauphine and he a young, dashing officer. The immediate connection was palpable, a spark that transcended the rigid formalities of court. Fersen was everything Louis XVI was not: charming, witty, adventurous, and possessed of a quiet strength and aristocratic bearing that deeply appealed to the young Archduchess, who often felt stifled by the French court strictures. Over the years, their friendship deepened, evolving into a bond that many, both then and now, believe transcended mere platonic affection. Yet, it is crucial to consider the context. In a court where emotional connections were often transactional and superficial, a genuine intellectual and emotional rapport, even without physical intimacy, could be perceived as a profound and dangerous affair in itself. The historical debate surrounding their relationship is intense and ongoing, often fueled by a desire for definitive answers in a story that resists easy categorization. For centuries, the idea of a physical affair between the Queen of France and a Swedish count was largely dismissed as mere revolutionary propaganda, a further attempt to blacken her name. However, recent breakthroughs in forensic analysis have shed new light on their correspondence. In 2020, scientists using advanced imaging techniques were able to decipher redacted sections of letters exchanged between Marie Antoinette and Fersen. These previously obscured passages, often marked by Fersen himself, revealed intimate phrases and expressions of deep affection, such as "I love you" and references to "my dearest." While these findings do not offer irrefutable proof of a physical affair, they provide compelling evidence of a profound emotional intimacy and a shared intellectual world that was, in itself, scandalous within the rigid confines of the court. This was a connection that offered Marie Antoinette a rare space for intellectual companionship and emotional vulnerability, a stark contrast to the often isolating and superficial relationships demanded by her royal station. Regardless of whether their relationship was physically consummated, the emotional and intellectual connection between Marie Antoinette and Fersen was undeniable. He became her rock, her confidant, the one person to whom she could truly unburden herself. In a court filled with sycophants and schemers, Fersen offered genuine loyalty, discretion, and understanding. He was a man of action, a stark contrast to the often indecisive Louis XV, and Marie Antoinette found in him a strength and resolve that she desperately needed as the political climate in France grew increasingly volatile. Their bond was a lifeline for the Queen, a private sanctuary where she could momentarily escape the relentless pressures and public condemnation that defined her existence. This was an affair of the mind and heart, a clandestine meeting of souls that provided solace and intellectual stimulation in a world that offered little of either. Fersen's loyalty was put to the ultimate test during the most perilous period of the French Revolution. He played a crucial, indeed heroic, role in organising the royal family's ill-fated attempt to escape Paris in June 1791, known as the Flight to Varennes. Disguised as a coachman, Fersen personally drove the royal carriage out of Paris, risking his life for the woman he loved and the monarchy he served. His meticulous planning and unwavering courage in the face of immense danger underscore the depth of his devotion. Though the escape ultimately failed, leading to the royal family's recapture and further imprisonment, Fersen's actions cemented his place in history as Marie Antoinette's most loyal and perhaps most passionate admirer. He continued to work tirelessly from abroad, attempting to orchestrate further escape plans and rallying support for the monarchy, even as the situation grew increasingly desperate. His actions were not those of a casual lover, but of a deeply committed individual, willing to sacrifice everything for his queen. The price of this loyalty, however, was immense. Fersen's close association with the Queen and the persistent rumours of their affair further fueled the revolutionary propaganda machine. He was branded a foreign conspirator, a symbol of the Queen's alleged treachery and her preference for foreign lovers over French interests. His devotion, intended to save her, inadvertently contributed to her public vilification, painting her as a promiscuous and unpatriotic queen. The very intensity of their bond, regardless of its physical nature, was exploited by revolutionaries to further demonize Marie Antoinette as unfaithful and un-French, a queen whose personal life was a betrayal of her nation. Fersen himself lived a life marked by the tragedy of Marie Antoinette's fate, never fully recovering from her execution. He remained a staunch royalist, his life forever intertwined with the memory of the queen he had loved so deeply. Their story, whether a tale of unrequited love or a clandestine affair of the heart, remains a powerful testament to the human heart's capacity for connection, even amidst the most brutal political upheavals and the devastating consequences of lust, lies, and royal shame, not just for the individuals involved, but for the very fabric of a nation. As the French Revolution spiraled into its most radical phase, the accusations against Marie Antoinette, once confined to the whispers of Versailles and the scurrilous pages of Libelle, transformed into formal charges in a revolutionary court. The trial of the Queen, in October 1793, was not a pursuit of justice. It was a political spectacle, a meticulously orchestrated act of public theatre, designed to legitimize her predetermined execution and to solidify the new republic's break with the Ancien Regime. It was here, in the chilling atmosphere of the Revolutionary Tribunal, that the weaponization of lies reached its ultimate, most horrifying crescendo. The storming of the Tuileries Palace in August 1792 had marked the effective end of the monarchy. The royal family, stripped of their titles and imprisoned in the grim confines of the Temple Tower, became symbols of a deposed tyranny. Louis XVI's execution in January 1793 sent a clear message: the revolution would spare no one, not even a king. Marie Antoinette, now a widow, was the next logical target. Her trial was a foregone conclusion, a macabre formality to justify what the revolutionaries already intended. Under the relentless prosecution of Antoine Quentin Fouquier-Tinville, a man whose name would become synonymous with the Reign of Terror, Marie Antoinette faced a litany of charges. These range from treason and conspiracy against the state to squandering national funds and even orchestrating the massacre of Swiss guards. But these political accusations, damning as they were not enough to fully satisfy the revolutionary thirst for vengeance. To truly dehumanize her, to strip her of every last shred of dignity and maternal sympathy, the prosecution unleashed its most insidious and shocking weapon, the accusation of incest with her own son, the young Dauphin. This vile fabrication, extracted under duress from the traumatized and sickly child, was a deliberate and cynical tactic. The Dauphin, barely 8 years old, had been systematically abused and indoctrinated by his revolutionary captors, coerced into signing a statement accusing his mother and aunt of sexual impropriety. When the accusation was read aloud in court, Marie Antoinette, who had maintained a stoic composure throughout the proceedings, finally broke. Her voice trembling, she appealed directly to the mothers in the audience, declaring, "I appeal to all mothers present in this assembly. Is such a thing possible?" It was a rare moment of raw, unscripted emotion, a desperate plea for humanity in a court devoid of it. Yet, even this powerful appeal was largely ignored, drowned out by the predetermined narrative of her depravity. The incest allegation served multiple chilling purposes. Firstly, it aimed to utterly destroy her image as a mother, a role held sacred even by the most radical revolutionaries. By portraying her as a monster who corrupted her own child, they sought to alienate her from any potential sympathizers and to justify her execution as a necessary act of purification for the new French Republic. Secondly, it intertwined her alleged sexual perversions with her political corruption, arguing that her moral decay was a direct reflection of her treasonous actions. Lust, lies, and royal shame were woven into a narrative of ultimate depravity, making her not just a political enemy, but a moral abomination. The trial itself was a masterclass in political theatre. The outcome was never in doubt. The prosecution presented little credible evidence, relying instead on hearsay, coerced testimony, and the years of accumulated propaganda that had already poisoned public opinion. Marie Antoinette's defense lawyers, appointed by the court, were given little time to prepare and were largely ineffective against the relentless onslaught of accusations. The courtroom was packed with a hostile audience, eager to witness the downfall of the woman they had been taught to despise. The trial was not about proving guilt. It was about solidifying a narrative, about presenting Marie Antoinette as the embodiment of everything the revolution sought to destroy. On October 16, 1793, Marie Antoinette, stripped of her royal titles and reduced to the title of citizen Capet, was led to the guillotine. Her final journey through the streets of Paris in an open cart was a stark contrast to her triumphant entry into the city years before. The crowds that once cheered her now jeered, their faces contorted with hatred, a testament to the effectiveness of the propaganda that had demonized her. She faced her death with remarkable composure, a final act of defiance against those who sought to strip her of her dignity. Her execution marked the end of an era, but the legacy of the lies and scandals that had plagued her would continue to shape her historical image for centuries to come. The Revolutionary Tribunal, in its ruthless efficiency, demonstrated the ultimate weaponization of a public image, proving that in times of upheaval, truth is often the first casualty, and narrative control, the most potent form of power. As we conclude our journey into the hidden affairs of Marie Antoinette, we are left with a complex and often contradictory portrait of a queen whose life was inextricably intertwined with the fate of a nation. Her story is not merely a historical account of alleged indiscretions. It is a profound exploration of the destructive power of rumour, the political weaponization of personal lives, and the tragic consequences of a queen's alleged indiscretions. Marie Antoinette, whether innocent or guilty of the charges levelled against her, became a symbol, a convenient scapegoat for the deep-seated resentments and anxieties that simmered beneath the surface of French society. Her historical image has been shaped, perhaps more than any other historical figure, by the relentless tide of gossip, lies, and scandalous narratives. From the unconsummated marriage and the early whispers of frivolity to the catastrophic affair of the diamond necklace and the intimate yet debated relationship with Axel von Fersen, Marie Antoinette's life was a constant battle against a public perception that was often more potent than reality. The libels and pamphlets, the revolutionary propaganda, and the show trial all played a crucial role in transforming her from a young, often naive archduchess into a monstrous caricature of vice, a figure of lust, lies, and royal shame. The tragic irony of Marie Antoinette's fate lies in the fact that she was, in many ways, a victim of the very system she represented. Born into a world of absolute power and privilege, she was ill-equipped to navigate the treacherous currents of court politics and the burgeoning revolutionary fervour. Her attempts to find personal freedom and happiness, often through seemingly innocent pleasures, were twisted and exaggerated by her detractors, becoming weapons in the hands of those who sought to dismantle the monarchy. The accusations of sexual promiscuity, whether true or false, served a powerful political purpose: to dehumanize her, to strip her of her legitimacy, and to justify her ultimate demise. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of reputation and the destructive force of public perception. In an age before mass media, the power of rumour and propaganda was immense, capable of shaping narratives and swaying public opinion with devastating effect. Marie Antoinette's life and death are a stark reminder that in the court of public opinion, perception often triumphs over truth, and that the personal lives of public figures can be mercilessly exploited for political gain. Her legacy remains a subject of intense debate, a testament to the enduring fascination with a queen who, for better or worse, became the embodiment of an era's excesses and its tragic end. Her hidden affairs, whether real or imagined, continue to fuel the narrative of a queen consumed by lust, lies, and the ultimate royal shame, a story that resonates through the centuries as a powerful reminder of the human cost of political upheaval and the enduring power of a compelling, albeit often fabricated, narrative.